We've decided to restructure the client relations department. Ruth, today will be your last. The sentence settled over the glass and steel conference room like a chill no one could open a window to escape. I kept my eyes on Dominic Hayes, the newly appointed managing partner who had arrived at Franklin and Associates barely 8 months earlier. His face was carefully composed, the practiced blend of regret and corporate distance that suggested he'd rehearsed this moment. "After 25 years," I replied, my voice steady even as everything inside me fractured. He nodded as though he'd anticipated the reaction. "Business decisions aren't personal," he said, pushing a manila folder toward me across the table. "HR has outlined your severance. 2-month salary, benefits through the end of the quarter." Janice from Human Resources sat beside him, her hands folded, offering a sympathetic expression without actually meeting my eyes. "These necessary changes impact multiple departments," she added softly. "This isn't a comment on your performance." Wasn't it? At 58, I was the oldest person in client relations, and my compensation reflected decades of experience that had helped transform Franklin and Associates from a scrappy consulting startup into one of Boston's most respected firms. "Does Arthur know about this?" I asked, naming Arthur Franklin, the founding partner who had personally hired me a quarter-century ago. Dominic's jaw tightened just enough to notice. "All partners were informed of the restructuring," he said, skirting the question with executive precision. "Arthur was in London, finalizing details of our European expansion." Dominic rose slightly from his chair, signaling the end. "Best of luck in your future endeavors. Security will assist you with clearing your desk. Standard procedure." I almost smiled at that. I had helped draft that very procedure 12 years earlier. "My name is Ruth Pearson, and until 10 minutes ago I was the Senior Director of Client Relations at one of Boston's premier legal consulting firms. I had built my career on relationships, on knowing clients beyond contracts, on anticipating concerns before they were voiced, on making people feel seen in an industry obsessed with billable hours. Where competitors blurred together, I made sure our clients felt anchored to us. Now, after 25 years, I was being released with a folder of documents and carefully worded phrases. While the security guard lingered a few steps away, I gathered my belongings. Photographs from charity galas, handwritten notes from families we'd guided through painful corporate transitions, the crystal paperweight Arthur had given me on my 20th anniversary, engraved with a simple "thank you." My phone vibrated. A message from Catherine Winters, the CEO of our largest client. "Heard unsettling rumors about FNA. Quarterly review next week. Call me as soon as possible." Across the room, Dominic was already on his phone, undoubtedly smoothing the edges of the narrative, unaware that trust could not be reassigned the way files were. I had joined the firm in 1998, when we occupied half a floor and served 17 clients. Arthur was 42 then, idealistic and determined. "Numbers matter, Ruth," he'd told me, "but relationships are the core. Anyone can analyze data. Not everyone can earn trust." I lived by that creed, memorizing milestones, family names, business anxieties, and unspoken expectations. On my 20th anniversary, Arthur had called me the architect of our client relations, the foundation beneath everything else. But 2 years ago, outside investors entered the picture. New partners followed, armed with impressive credentials and a fixation on efficiency metrics. Dominic Hayes had been the most aggressive of them all. Since his arrival, turnover had spiked, and the firm's unspoken philosophy had shifted from clients first to maximum extraction. I warned them during executive meetings. "We're trading long-term loyalty for short-term gains," I said. Dominic waved it off. "The market has evolved. Some legacy systems need to go." Gradually, I was sidelined. Strategy meetings passed without my invitation. Email chains excluded me. Younger staff were assigned to my accounts without consultation. Still, I believed my history and the clients who represented more than 60% of our annual revenue would shield me. Catherine Winters alone generated nearly $4 million a year and had repeatedly requested me as their sole point of contact. Then I overheard Dominic last week. This restructuring lets us trim legacy fat. Their retirement costs will bleed us dry. I should have understood then. But after 25 years, I'd made the mistake of believing loyalty still carried weight. 3 days later, the sting of being escorted out like a liability still lingered as I sat in my apartment, job boards open, messages unanswered. My LinkedIn notifications surged. There's nothing like sudden dismissal to make experience fashionable again. When the landline rang, I nearly ignored it until I recognized the number. "Hello, Ruth." Arthur's voice carried a strain I'd never heard before. "I just landed. This wasn't approved by me." Relief, anger, and disappointment collided all at once. "It happened anyway," I said, evenly. He admitted they had waited until he was abroad, pushing it through as an emergency decision to appease investors. "You deserved far better than this, Ruth. Let me fix it. Come back. We'll call it a miscommunication." I stopped him. "It doesn't work like that. Once leadership undermines you, authority evaporates." He fell silent. "Dominic reassigned your accounts," he said. "Melissa Bennett has Winter's healthcare." I laughed softly. Catherine had openly disliked Melissa's approach. After the call ended, my phone lit up again. Clients. One after another. I hadn't reached out. I didn't need to. They spoke among themselves. That evening, a courier delivered an envelope from Catherine Goldstein, Boston's most sought-after recruiter, with a handwritten note inviting me to dinner. The next morning, Catherine called before 8. "Tell me you're not really gone." When I confirmed it, she bothered hiding her anger. "Our contract renews in 60 days, she said. "I'd rather move with you." By midday, 5 more clients echoed the same sentiment. By nightfall, 11. When I met Catherine Goldstein over dinner, she slid a folder across the table. "3 firms are ready to meet. 2 are building roles specifically for you and your relationships." I scanned the numbers, stunned by what I saw. They were offering almost double my previous salary. "They're not just paying for your expertise," Catherine explained, reading my expression. "They're paying for your little black book." The irony wasn't lost on me. After being discarded as too expensive by Franklin and Associates, I was now worth twice as much to their competitors. I wondered if Dominic had considered that possibility in his cost-cutting calculations. The next morning, Arthur called again. "I need to see you," he said, sounding uncharacteristically agitated. "Can you come to the office?" "I don't think that's appropriate given the circumstances." "Then lunch, the harvest, 1 p.m. Please, Ruth, things are happening that you should know about." Curiosity got the better of me. At precisely 1 p.m., I walked into the harvest to find Arthur already seated, looking haggard. "Thank you for coming," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I've been trying to fix this situation, but Dominic is blocking me at every turn. He's convinced the board that your termination was necessary for modernizing our approach." "And the clients?" I asked. "How are they responding to this modernization?" Arthur winced. "Not well. Catherine Winters has demanded a meeting with the entire executive team. Douglas from Archer Pharmaceuticals has canceled their quarterly review. Even Westrig Manufacturing, a client known for institutional loyalty, was rumored to be seeking proposals from competitors." Then came the call that changed everything. "Ruth Pearson," I answered while reviewing Blackwell's offer letter. "Miss Pearson, this is Jeffrey Hammond from the Boston Business Journal." I sat up straighter. The BBJ was the Bible of Boston's corporate world. "I'm working on a story about the recent leadership changes at Franklin and Associates and their impact on client relationships. Several sources have mentioned your name. Would you be willing to comment?" This was dangerous territory. Anything I said could be construed as disparaging my former employer, potentially exposing me to legal action under the non-disparagement clause in my severance agreement. "I'm not comfortable commenting on internal matters at Franklin and Associates," I replied carefully. "Understandable," Hammond said. "What about the fact that 7 major clients have already announced terminating their relationships with F&A? Industry insiders are suggesting this exodus is directly related to your departure." 7 clients? I'd only spoken directly with 15, and none had definitively stated they were leaving. I can't speak to clients' business decisions, I said. Many factors go into selecting consulting partners. I could hear Hammond typing. One more question. Any comment on the letter signed by 26 of FNA's clients demanding Arthur Franklin replace Dominic Hayes as managing partner? I nearly dropped the phone. I have no knowledge of such a letter. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. 26 clients, an organized demand to replace Dominic. I hadn't orchestrated any of this. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Emergency all-hands meeting called for tomorrow morning. Partners flying in from everywhere. Dominic looks like he's about to have a stroke. An hour later, Arthur called. "Did you organize this client revolt?" he demanded without preamble. "I've done nothing, Arthur. I haven't solicited a single client." "Then how do you explain this?" he asked, his voice tight with disbelief. "Desperate. 70% of our client base is threatening to leave. The board is in panic mode. Investors are demanding answers I don't have." "Perhaps they value relationship continuity more than cost-cutting efficiency," I suggested, the bitter satisfaction in my voice thinly masking the pleasure of hearing panic in Arthur's tone, the same Arthur who had failed to protect me after 25 years of loyalty. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Come back," he pleaded, "not as chief client officer, as full equity partner. Help me stabilize the situation." Partner, the position I'd deserved for at least a decade, but had been repeatedly denied. But Dominic, Arthur's voice hardened. "The board is meeting tonight. His future will be decided before tomorrow's all-hands meeting." I thought about the Blackwell offer before me. Partnership, comfortable, lucrative, far less complicated than returning to FNA. Yet I had built those client relationships over 25 years. They were in many ways my life's work. "I need to think about it," I said finally. "I'll give you my answer in the morning." Sleep eluded me. I paced my apartment weighing options as the digital clock ticked toward dawn. Returning to Franklin & Associates meant facing colleagues who had watched my humiliating exit in silence, navigating the political aftermath of Dominic's apparent downfall, a downfall I hadn't engineered but would surely be blamed for. The firm's culture had been deteriorating for years. One leadership change wouldn't fix that overnight. On the other hand, Blackwell offered a fresh start. New colleagues, new culture, new opportunities. The compensation and partnership were generous. I could bring willing clients with me and build something vibrant. By 6 a.m., I had made my decision. I called Catherine Goldstein, knowing she'd be awake. "I'm going with Blackwell," I told her. "Smart choice," she replied. "I'll let them know. They'll be thrilled." "There's something else I need from them," I added, explaining my condition. Catherine listened, then laughed. "Ruthless Ruth, I love it. I'll present it to them this morning." At 8:45 a.m., I walked into Franklin & Associates for the first time since my termination. The receptionist's eyes widened. "Miss Pearson, are you here for the all-hands meeting?" "I am. Arthur is expecting me." The conference room was packed. Partners who normally attended virtually had flown in from across the country. Junior staff crowded along the walls. Arthur stood at the front, flanked by board members. Dominic was conspicuously absent. A hush fell over the room as I entered. Arthur's relief was visible from across the room. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "As you know, we're facing unprecedented client concerns following recent staffing decisions." His eyes flickered to me. "I'm pleased to announce that Ruth Pearson has agreed to return to Franklin & Associates as a full equity partner, leading our newly formed Client Relations Division." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Arthur raised his hand for silence. "Additionally, the board has unanimously voted to remove Dominic Hayes as managing partner, effective immediately. His approach was ultimately deemed inconsistent with our firm's values and client commitment. The atmosphere in the room was electric, shock, relief, and uncertainty mingling almost visibly in the air. "Ruth, would you like to say a few words?" Arthur gestured me forward. As I took my place at the front, I saw Thomas give me a subtle thumbs up from the back wall. I surveyed the faces before me, some hopeful, some wary, all attentive. "Thank you, Arthur. I appreciate the offer to return as partner," I began. "However, I must clarify something important. I'm not coming back to Franklin and Associates." Arthur's face froze in confusion. Several board members exchanged alarmed glances. "Instead," I continued calmly, "I'm pleased to announce that I've accepted a partnership position at Blackwell Consulting, which has just completed acquisition negotiations with Horizon Capital to purchase a controlling interest in Franklin and Associates." The room erupted in shocked exclamations. Arthur looked as though he'd been struck. "The transition will begin next week," I continued once the noise subsided. "Blackwell has assured me they value the institutional knowledge and client relationships built here. There are no plans for mass layoffs or restructuring unless, of course, deemed necessary for efficiency." Arthur stepped forward. "Ruth, what have you done?" "I haven't done anything," I replied. "Blackwell has been seeking to expand their Boston presence for years. Horizon Capital, as majority shareholder in F&A, was happy to consider their offer, especially given recent client instability. It's just business, after all, nothing personal." As the implications sank in, I saw the dawning realization in Arthur's eyes. He had failed to protect me when it mattered. He had allowed loyalty to be sacrificed for short-term gains. Now, facing his own obsolescence, he understood the true cost of those decisions. The meeting dissolved into chaos as I walked out head high. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine Winters. "Just heard the news. Dinner tonight to discuss Winters Healthcare's future with Blackwell." I smiled as I stepped into the elevator. I hadn't sought revenge, but justice had found its way to me nonetheless. The Boston Business Journal broke the story the next morning. "Consulting shakeup. Blackwell acquires Franklin and Associates after client exodus." The article detailed how the departure of a key senior executive had triggered an unprecedented client revolt, destabilizing the firm enough to make the acquisition possible. My name appeared only once, buried in the 15th paragraph. "Ruth Pearson, former Senior Director of Client Relations, has accepted a partnership at Blackwell and will oversee the integration of Franklin and Associates client portfolios." It was a clinical description of what was in reality a seismic power shift. Within 3 weeks, I had gone from terminated employee to the person controlling the very firm that had discarded me. Integration planning began immediately. I worked from Blackwell's offices reviewing organizational charts and client portfolios from both firms. Each day brought a parade of former Franklin colleagues to my door, some seeking reassurance about their positions, others suddenly remembering how they'd always respected my work or disagreed with Dominic's decisions. Arthur requested a meeting 1 week after the acquisition announcement. He'd aged a decade in 20 days. "You orchestrated this," he said, sitting across from me. Not a question, but an accusation. "No, Arthur. I simply recognized my own value even when you didn't." "Dominic was a symptom, not the cause," I interrupted. "You allowed the firm's culture to change, prioritized growth over relationships, and forgot the principles you founded the company on. And now you control it all." "Not control, Ruth. Influence. There's a difference you used to understand." I slid a document across the desk. "Blackwell is offering you a 3-year consulting position, advisory only, no management responsibilities. It's generous considering the circumstances." He stared at the paper, then at me. "And if I refuse?" he asked. "Then you walk away with nothing but your ownership payout. Your choice." 6 months after the acquisition, Blackwell Franklin Consulting occupied 2 floors of a gleaming downtown tower. The integration had been smoother than anyone anticipated, partly because I insisted on retaining most of Franklin's staff, knowing their value even when others hadn't. Dominic had landed at a smaller firm, his reputation tarnished by the spectacular collapse he'd triggered. Arthur had accepted the consulting role, though our interactions remained strictly professional. The wound of betrayal, his failure to protect me after 25 years, would never fully heal. In my corner office, I reviewed the quarterly numbers with a satisfaction I'd never allowed myself to show publicly. Client retention through the transition had exceeded 95%. The 3 clients who'd left during the initial exodus had already returned. Our combined revenues were up 23% year over year. My assistant knocked and entered. "Miss Winters is here for your lunch." Catherine strode in, elegant as always in a tailored suit. "Congratulations on the quarterly results. The industry is still talking about the most elegant corporate takeover they've seen in decades." I smiled. "It wasn't a takeover, it was a market correction." "Call it what you will," Catherine laughed. "You proved what I've always known. In professional services, relationships are the real asset. Everything else is just infrastructure." As we headed to lunch, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. I hadn't sought revenge when Franklin and Associates terminated me. I hadn't needed to. The firm had failed to recognize that their true value wasn't in systems, strategies, or even their brand. It was in the human connections that made clients feel understood, valued, and prioritized. By severing me without understanding what I represented, they had orchestrated their own downfall. And in doing so, they had inadvertently launched me into a position I'd earned through 25 years of dedication. Sometimes, justice doesn't require action. Sometimes it simply requires patience and the quiet confidence of knowing your own worth.